So welcome everyone. What we are now going to do is focus on the groups application by creating the views for the group templates and then connecting the template files to those views using the urls .py file for group applications. All right, let's go to the text editor and now we are starting. So by now you should already have your models.py file filled out for the groups application and we are going to open up views.py under groups and start filling out some basic views for our actual uh, group application. And we are going to do is a couple of things. First, a couple of imports I will say from Django.contrib.auth, that is for authorization, dot mixins, and I am going to import and I will import to mixins here the login required mixin and then the permission required mixin. And if you want, you can put these on multiple lines just by having parenthesis. So something that's common to see is if you have really long import lines, you can just use multi-lines with a parenthesis there. And then what we are also going to do is a bunch of other imports. We will say from django.core.url resolves import uh, from .url resolvers import reverse. And then I will also say from Django views import and then I'm going to import those generic views and that's just the class based views that we have worked with before. So I'm going to say class and I will have a create group view. So if someone is logged in into the site and they want to create their own group, kind of like creating your own subreddit, this will be the view for that and it's going to take in the long login required mixin and it will also take in the create view. And then here I just need to specify the fields I want them to be able to create. So we say fields is equal to and I want them to be able to edit the name of the field or the name of the group. Okay, so I would say and then the description and those are just directly linked to the model.py. So the name and the description I don't want them to be able to edit things like slugger members because that really would not make sense and so when they create a group it takes a generic create view and then finally I just need to connect it to the actual model. So if I'm going to connect it to the group model, that means I need to import it. So we'll say from group models and you can also say from models I will import group and then group members. So that way I can call them throughout these class based views. So right now we have our very basic create view. So to actually connect this to a template, we are going to need to later on edit our template under groups as well as our urs.py file. But let's continue. I'm going to create a detailed view and a list view, and then we'll actually mess around with those uh, template files. So I will say class and let's just say single group. Okay, so this is just going to be generic detail view. So it's just the details of that specific group, things like the post inside that group, etc. And that's just going to be connected to a model called group. So it's pretty simple. And then we'll have a list of groups. So when someone goes to like the list groups page, they will see a list of all the available groups, kind of like selecting a list, all subreddits or something like that. And then we'll say generic, and that will be a list view. And you can see already that class based views making our lives a lot simple. And then we'll say model is equal to group. So now I'm going to save that. Looks like we have three main class based views. uh, and so now let's head over to the templates and actually create those template files that connect them. So we already have group base, group detail, group form, and group list. So it should be a pretty good to go. Let us start off by saying group base, and in that group based HTML, I am going to say extends from base, and then I'm going to call block content. So that's going to extend from the actual base HTML file that I have already created uh, under the project templates. And then I have my content here. Okay, so I'm going to create a div container class, and then I will say div class uh, row in case I need that for bootstrap purpose. And then I'm going to make three blocks here. I will have a pre group block, a group content block, and then a post group block that we'll see how we can use later on. So this block I will say is pre-group. So we can actually just put it like this, so it's a little more readable than going to copy and paste this. And then we will have a block that is the group content. So group underscore content and then the post group. So we would not use all of these blocks in every template, but in case we ever want to have something like that goes before the group content, we have pre-group. During the group content we have group content, and then after the group content we have post group. So that's all we need. So I will save that, and then we are going to continue on with the other templates. So let's start off with the group detail page. So we'll come over to group detail, that very next template, and I will say here uh, extends from groups underscore uh, that after slash group underscore base dot html. It's that HTML file we was just working with. Then let's put everything we want to occur before the group name. So basically I will call block, and this will be my pre-group block, and then as a heading one I'm going to have the group name, and I can call that using template syntax by saying that group name. So So remember, with those class-based views, there is actually a context dictionary that gets passed that holds everything that the model has. So since group has names, I can just call group name, and this word group is the lowercase singular version of the actual model. So if you come to models.py, this is the lowercase model group, which is where that actual context dictionary comes from. And that, just as we have told you before, it comes from class based views, then heading to I'm going to say member count, and here I'm going to put another basically call to the context dictionary, and I'm going to call uh, group members. So again, come back to the model. Remember, we have members here, and of that I'm actually going to call a method, and I can call the count method or attribute of that. And if you want a list of these, you can check all the documentation for various things. You can call of model objects. All right. Now, the next step for this actual group detail page is on that group detail page where it's actually listing the posts. If you are remember and you are logged in, I want you to have a leave or join button there. So let's try to add that inside this same pre-block, pre-group block, and I'm going to create a div, and I will call this content in case I want to edit this, of course. And inside of this, I'm going to say if, and I will say if user in group members all. So that means if this user happens to be inside this essentially an array or list of all the members inside that actual group model, then I'm going to do the following. I will have an anchor tag that has an href to a URL, and then groups leave. So we have not actually create this view or URLs yet, but later on in our URLs file for the actual groups, we are going to be able to have is the option to leave the group. So we only want that if the user is already in the group. So we'll say, uh, okay, if the user is already in the group and they are visiting this page, they have the option to leave and they are going to be able to leave. But we also have to define what slug, and that's just going to be equal to group slug. And we all kind of edit this later on. But let's actually make sure this is URL template with those percent sign. And then inside of this, we are going to go ahead and give this a class. So we'll say class, and let me collapse this. So we get a little more room here, okay, little more space. The class is equal to, we'll just have this be a normal button. Let's say button, actually, let's make it a really large button. So it's kind of, I can start this on a new line. So it will say class button. It say button large, button large for a large button, LG. And I'm going to fill out this button and then let's make it a warning button. So it's like really obvious to the user that if they click that button, they are going to leave. And then we are also going to do is add in a span. So so we are going to use icons or glyph icons, and this will allow me to actually have an icon there instead of just like a word that says leave group. So it's going to look like an exit sign or something. So we'll have it be a remove circle, and that will be right next to the word leave. So we do this by creating a span, and then inside that span we create a class, and that class is going to be a glyph icon. Okay, and you can technically not really have the span. That's just kind of an icon I want to put in there. You can check out the Bootstrap documentation for all these codes and all the different icons they have available. And then I'm going to say leave. Okay. So if we have this button that shows up, if a group, if a member is already in that group, then they can click on that button and they will leave the group. So that's if that user is already in the group, as we should probably give them the option to join the group. So we will say else, and it's going to be a really similar thing. We'll have h href, and then let's actually just copy this because it's so similar. So I'm going to copy this entire anchor tag and then post it here. And then inside this anchor tag, let's change what we want. So as if they are not going to leave it, then we know they are going to join it. So we'll make another view later on for URL groups join. The same thing is going to be the slug, and we can have the same thing as a button warning, and you can change. If you want button warning or button default for coloring, we will have instead of a remove circle. So I'm going to say okay, and then we'll say instead of leave, join. Again, basic idea, we check if that user who's currently visiting this page is in group members at all, and then whether or not they are going to leave or join. So it's all right. And so now we are actually almost done with group detail.html. I'm going to scroll down past this block, and then I will start a new block. And this is just going to be my group content here. And then what we'll do is, uh, I don't want the group content, that is the list of actual post, to take up the entire page. I kind of want them line it up a little bit. So what I am going to do is say div class, and I will give this a class of call medium 8. Those are those bootstrap formations. Then we will say if, and I'm going to say if group dot post dot count is equal to 0, and that basically means if the group does not really have any post in it yet, what I will say is, instead of listing something, I'm just going to have a header too that says no post in this group yet. So let's make sure we spell that right. No post in this group yet. Then if we don't have else, actually let's say else. So what else we are going to do? We are going to say for post group the post all, and then I'm going to just cycle though through this. But what I'm going to do is say include, and then we will say post forward slash underscore post HTML. And let me kind of describe, since we have not really seen uh, include yet what's going on there. And other than that, we are actually done with this page. So let's take a little bit of time to kind of do a little description of line 31. So all I'm doing here is I'm saying if the group currently has no post, just have a heading to that. Says no post in this group yet. But in a more likely situation where we actually already have post not groups, what I want to do is say for post and groups that post at all, and then I'm going to include now. Include is kind of a way of saying extends, except you are going to essentially insert it right in the middle of an HTML file. So instead of actually extending and using blocks, we can do is use this include statement to inject an HTML files, since there is going to be so much stuff going on with the post themselves. a lot of HTML calls, a lot of template calls, a lot of template text. I don't want to include all of that in this group detailed page HTML. Instead, what I will do is have that all taken care of in this post HTML file. And since this is going to be injected to kind of signify that as a developer, I have this underscore there. Now I technically don't need that underscore there. So it's really more for me to understand that this particular piece of HTML file is designed uh, to be injected into other HTML files using include. So that's the kind of syntax that I'm going to be using to actually understand that. So that's it for the group detail page. And we are going to do is finish off those other class based views that we just created. So we'll come back uh, here, and the next one we are going to do is the group list page. So that should be pretty straightforward. And so let's go to group list, click on that, and then this is going to extend from groups slash groups underscore base HTML. So let's collapse that directory tree again and make a room again space. So I'm going to call a block for my pre-content or pre-group content. Then here what I will say is give this a class of call medium for, and lot of these class calls you can adjust them yourself. So this is more for styling. And then we will say content. And now what uh, I want to do is check if a user is logged in and they are authenticated. So I want something to say a welcome back username. And if not, it's going to just say, hey, welcome to the group page, select the group. So let's try that out, and we'll say if the user is underscore authenticated, and I can use all of these user template calls because of the Django authorization package basically takes care of all the heavy lifting to connections to connect this on the backend. So if you can just say user is authenticated, and what I will do is if they are authenticated, I will have a heading to on this web page that says welcome back. And inside of this heading to I am also going to have an anchor tag, and it's going to link to their actual profile. So we'll say URL, then post for underscore user, so that it actually links to their profile where it has a list of all their posts in case they ever want to see that. And then I also need to provide their username. So say username is equal to user, dot username. And then inside of here, in the actual anchor tag, what I'm going to do is say and with the template tags, I need to inject this double. So we'll say at user dot username. So that basically has that kind of Twitter quality or basically any social network quality where if this user is authenticated, it will say welcome back. There will be a link here that says username, and if you click on that link, it will take you to a list of all your posts, and you are going to take care of that view later on when we are dealing with post. Now we'll end the if so for everyone though it will show the following. It will say groups heading 2. Then we'll just have a paragraph here that says welcome to the group page, uh, then exclamation points, save that. And then the other thing I want to do is check that if the user is authenticated, I should be able to kind of have a button there. It says create new group. So we'll do that as well. So we'll say if outside of this first tag, if the user is underscore authenticated, I will have an anchor tag here where again the anchor tag is linked to this. So this anchor tag is linked to URL group underscore create. And there is couple of ways you could have done this. You don't have to do it exactly the same way I'm doing it, but I'm just going to do it for a simple button called button, then button mid MD button fill. Okay. Now remember from the navigation bar, technically the user can already create a group from any page. So there is a little link in the navigation, but since you are on the group page, it might be nice to actually have it as a separate button as well on the actual group page. So that's why I'm adding this in. And then we will go ahead and add a span and use those glyph icons. So, so in the span, I will give it the class glyph. So let me make sure I spell that right glyph icon. And we are having trouble with this glyph icon. So it looks like a little plus sign. And we'll just have the text right next to it. We create a new group, and then we need to end the if. All right. So that's it for that at the very top of the page, and so that will end the pre-group block. So it just checks welcome back and then says welcome to the groups page that has a little button there. If you are authenticated to create a new group next, uh, so we are going to do is the actual group or content. So we will say have a new block of group content, and then let's go ahead and give this one more division. So we'll say this should be called dash medium dash 8. So it doesn't take up everything, and then we'll say div class. I will say list group in case we ever want to edit this with CSS. Now I'm going to have a for loop, and I'm going to say for group in object underscore list, and we'll talk about this object underscore list later on. So for group and object list, I'm going to have an anchor tag, and we'll give this a URL call. So URL group single, where the slug is equal to the group. So you can thought slug itself, and I'm going to have this actually have a class. We'll say this class will be list group item in case I ever want to edit or call it. And then let's kind of start this rest of this anchor tag on a new line, and that is going to have. So let's say inside this anchor tag, we'll have a heading 3 with a class of its own, and this class will say title list group item heading. So in case you ever want to edit that, that's where you can do it in the CSS. And then I will say the group actual name. Okay, so that's the heading 3. And what is actually going on here, let's kind of briefly describe it. So far I have for every group in my object list, which is essentially going to be list of the actual groups. Remember, this is the group list HTML. Now, I'm going to have a anchor tag that so for as a link to the group name. So if you click on that group name, it will take you to that group's single page through this slug connection. But there is still more I want to add here. I'm going to inside of the same anchor tag create a div class, and we'll say list group item, and I'm going to call it text, and then say container dash fluid. So that's a bootstrap, a container call. And then here is where I am finally going to use that description. So we'll say uh, description underscore HTML, then pipe operator. So I will say save. So that allows me, if you remember from the previous clone project, that allows me to actually use HTML code in a safe way so that if something is bold, you actually see bold text instead of seeing bold, uh, that bold template tag or bold HTML tag. Now, what we want to do is right after this, we are going to call another div. And this is just going to be a row. So if you want, just copy and paste this from the actual solution in course content. So you don't make any typo mistake here anyway. So it's really easy to make a typo here, and I'm sure I am making one right now, which we are going to fix later, and we'll create one more that says call medium 4, and we'll create a span, and we'll say this is a class, and we'll give this a batch class. And then we are going to do is here is inside the span, I will have group members counts. Then inside of that, I'm going to say, uh, so I'm going to say, remember, uh, member dot counts, so group dot members dot count, plurals. And later on, we'll actually see what this does. So plural, like, so make sure I don't accidentally spell it wrong. So so that's the end of this particular div. And then we are going to start one more inside of this row object. So we div, and this is also going to be called uh, medium 4. And here again, we'll basically have the same thing. Span with the class is equal to base, and then we will call a group the post count. Then outside of this, we'll have post with template tagging, and I'm going to inject group post counts, and then we'll call plurals on that as well. Okay, so uh, as a so a ton of tags here, division tags here, and I promise we'll go over all this at the very end. But now we are going to do is basically scroll down and end this. So make sure everything is lined up, and we should have two div tags after the end, 4, and then an anchor and 3 more div tags before that, and everything else should be lining up. So if you don't have that, you probably made a typo somewhere. So just copy and paste from the solutions. So that's a lot easier than typing along with me. But let's actually go through this group list. Okay, patience, there is a lot going on here. First off, in pre-group, all we are doing is just checking if the user authenticated. If they are, we have a little thing that says welcome back at whoever the user is, and it linked to that user's post. So you log in, you go to the groups page, says welcome back. So click on that. Then it takes a lot list of all post. Then it says end if. Now for everybody, we say welcome to the group page. Then we check if the user is authenticated. Let's add a little button there so they can create a new group. There is also one on the navigation bar, but we should have one here as well. That's the end of the pre-group block. Now it's the much more complicated group content block, but it's actually not so bad. So basically what we are going is we are saying, okay, for every group in this object list, which is going to be a list of all the group object, we are going to have an essentially you can kind of ignore these class calls since they are just CSS and focus on what's really going on here. So here we are going to say group name, and you can click on that group name and it will take you onto the single group page. So that group detail page that we just created earlier, and then the actual description we call with description. uh, Description underscore HTML, and we call it with safe. That way, in case there is any bold text or italics text, whatever they happen to be displayed correctly in a safe format. Then we have these group members count and group post count. So on the actual page where it details the groups that are available, it will say how many posts that groups has and how many members that group has as well. And that's basically all it's going on here. And it's just the large amount of div class calls that kind of make it hard to read. But essentially, it's just a pretty simple for loop that displaying the group name, the number of members in that group, and the number of posts in that group. So then, when you click the group name, it will take you to that actual group detail page, and that's all it's going on in group list. Now, finally, what I want to fill out is, let's say someone does click on create a new group. So they are going to go to groups create, and that's going to be created by that create view. So let's come over here and set that up with group underscore form. So in this page, I'm going to say extends group uh, slash group underscore base HTML. And then I'm also going to remember this is a form, so I will load up Bootstrap 3 to make the form look nice. So then we'll have block, and then it will say group underscore content, and here does really matter what heading size you use. I'm just going to say create a new group, and then we'll create a form here. So we'll say from clips not for forms, and this form Eclipse so would not have a class, but it will have an icon action, and the action will link back to your URL groups underscore create. So basically this is linking to our create view, and then we'll give this post method and we'll actually almost give it an ID in case we ever want to edit it with CSS, and we'll say group form, and let's make it. So make it a group form with camel casing, just so I know. And inside of here, since it's a form, we always need our CSV token and CSRF token. Then below that, we are going to have the form call. So if template helps with template tagging, we will call bootstrap form as we saw before, bootstrap underscore form, and then pass in that form. So this makes it look a lot nicer. And we are using bootstrap 3, which again you had a pip install bootstrap 3, and you can have updated version bootstrap 4 and 5. Finally, we have an input block, and that will just be type submit, and will say values say create, so it's a create. And then let's give this a class. So we don't need to give it a name, and button button primary and then button large. So definitely did a lot of stuff here. So let's quickly review. We finished off all the templates for groups as well as most of the views. So let's quickly review. So what we did in this lecture was we came over to views.py in the groups application, and we created three main views for creating a new group, for looking at a single group, and then the list groups. And then we actually went to the templates and filled that out ourselves. So the base as template just has these three blocks. What does before the group, what the actual group content is, and then the post group. That way we can easily separate them. Then we actually have the detailed page of a group which just shows the group name, the number of members in that group. And then it actually says if the user is in that group, there is leave button. If the user is not in that group, there is a join button that we can connect users to groups themselves. And here we just say, okay, if there is no post in the group, just say no post. So if there are posts though, we are just going to kind of inject this underscore post dot html content that we'll work with later on in the future lecture. Then we actually went to the group list page, which was a little complicated, but essentially just shows welcome back to the user, and it says welcome to the groups page. So if the user is authenticated, we have a little new button that says you can create a new group. And then here we just actually list out every group with a link to the group, and then the number of members and number of posts in that group. Finally, for that create view, we have group underscore form or just as create group, and we have that form that we just created. So we are actually still not done with all the views for groups. There is a lot more complicated views that we are going to do in the next lecture, and that's basically the view for joining a group and leaving a group. So that's going to kind of require a little bit more code to actually make these work. So if you have any questions, feel free to post and ask me in chat. And definitely did a lot here, and we definitely typed a lot things, lot view. So if you are stuck on something or somewhere, feel free to ask me and copy and paste that code, and you can ask ChatGPT also. You can get help from ChatGPT and you can solve it, and you can ask me in chat.